In the early 2000s, Mexican journalist Guillermo Marin stepped forward with a bold claim. The CIA had attacked a sovereign piece of Mexican territory, and had done so severely that they blew it off the face of the earth. Why would they do this? What evidence did he have? Spoiler alert, not really any. But more importantly, why would they do this? I'm King Trout, and in a cruel twist of irony, my two greatest fears are commitment and dying alone. And heights, but that's neither here nor there. Join me today as we discuss the mysterious disappearance of the Mexican island of Bermeja. Our story begins all the way back in 1539 with the earliest known mention of the island of Bermeja. It was discovered by some Spanish explorer. No one knows who, which I find kind of odd, but regardless, that's when it first began to appear on maps. It was described as a small reddish-brown island. The Spanish word Bermeja means reddish-brown, or russet, which is this color. Ugh. But remember that color. It will come up again later. Spanish explorers began including it on their maps during the Age of Exploration, where it appeared approximately 60 miles north of the Yucatan Peninsula. What is that in kilometers? Don't know, don't care. It continued to be included on maps, leading to its credibility as a legitimate landmass, despite the fact that there were very few first-hand accounts of its existence. One, two, skip a few, 304 years later, in 1844, doubts about Bermeja's existence began to arise. British cartographer John Arrowsmith excluded it from his maps because he believed it was either a phantom island or one of those stupid Spaniards had made a mistake. Spain and England have had kind of an on-again, off-again situationship, as the kids would say, over the course of history. But during this time, they were on again because they had just come together to do war with the country everyone in the world loves to hate, France. But that has nothing to do with this story. Through the late 1800s, ships navigating the Gulf of Mexico reported no sightings of the island where it was supposed to exist, which fueled the debate between sailors and cartographers as to whether or not Bermeja even existed. Bing bong, fast forward a couple more decades to the 1940s, when cartography became even more advanced, primarily because this guy wanted half of Poland. Due to these advancements in cartography, the island began to appear on fewer and fewer maps, and the belief that it was a phantom island began to increase. I'm not doing the thing anymore, because I say phantom island like 6 more times in this video. For the record, a phantom island is a geographical error where one time one dude made note of a piece of land existing and everybody just copied his homework instead of double-checking and confirming that it was actually there. So a fake island disappeared. Womp womp.
Did you say want want?
Bottom line is very clear.
How dare you?
When you cross
absolutely
the border
dare you,
illegally,
sir? Who
Who cares? Not really anybody. Until 1988, when my favorite global organization came along. The UN! In 1988, the UN adopted the Convention on the Law of the Sea in Montego Bay, Jamaica. Key Largo, Montego, baby, why don't we go? We'll get there fast, and then we'll adopt international conventions on the legality of mineral and fishing rights of the world's oceans. Yes, this convention established the rights to nations' territorial waters, as well as exclusive economic zones, or EEZs, not to be confused with Eazy-E, who was a famous rapper from Compton who died of AIDS. EEZs allow for the exclusive economic control of the waters surrounding a nation's country. Surrounding a nation would be the easier way of saying that. I don't know why I'm struggling to say EEZ as opposed to exclusive economic zone. For some reason, I find that easier to say. I think it's because I want to say Eazy-E, the rapper who died of AIDS. They determined that a nation's EEZ would extend 200 nautical miles out from their coastline, including islands. Can you see where this is going? Can you? Okay. Talking about an island? Okay. So the convention went into force in November of 1994 after it received the necessary ratifications. As such, the Gulf of Mexico was divided amongst the nations bordering it, 200 nautical miles out from their shores. Now, in between the exclusive economic zones of Mexico and the United States of America, there existed a so-called donut hole. where neither of the borders reached fully to meet each other. Now, why is this donut hole noteworthy? It's because it's bleeding oil, baby. Black gold. In 1997, America approached Mexico and was like, "Hola, y'all. Want to go 50-50 and double team that oiled up donut hole?" And then all of a sudden, and for no particular reason I'm sure, Mexico remembered Bermeja. Since the EEZs extend out from all coastline, including islands, if they could prove that the island of Bermeja existed, then they would have that oily hole all to themselves. So the search was on. Mexico sent out their Navy and some university survey teams into the area with advanced sonar and satellite technology to find the island. And finally, one day, they gave up because they didn't find anything. But this prompted two questions. One, was Bermeja real? And two, if it was real, where the hell did it go? The year is now 2000, and the US is thirsty for oil. But they have a plan. No, not that yet. They were going to meet up with the Mexican government and arrange, some sort of deal where both of us could use the donut hole. They were going to meet up and sign a treaty expressly breaking up how that area could be used, since nobody technically owned it, and the only two nations that could, in theory, even get there legally were the United States and Mexico, since both of us owned all of the ocean around it. So in 2000, the Mexican government, despite many critics to the agreement, including Guillermo Marin, as mentioned at the beginning of the video, met with the United States and signed the treaty. The Treaty of the Delimitation of the Continental Shelf remains in place to this day. Now, like I just said, there were many critics in Mexico to this agreement because they felt they were getting the short end of the stick. If they could just prove Bermeja existed, then they owned almost all of that sweet, sweet donut hole. Which, seriously, why? I get why you would call it that because it's like a cute nickname, but give it a technical name. I'm talking about a very resource-rich part of the ocean the two nations are, signing treaties over. Or are we going to call it a silly snack name? I don't know, whatever, I guess. Regardless, in 2008, yet another Mexican expedition was sent out to find the island. And they could not, further confirming its lack of existence. But, insert fart noise here, I literally only have 3 jokes. I don't know why you guys keep watching these videos. This led to theories concerning the absence of the island. These theories range all the way from the batshit crazy to the, I don't know, maybe. Let's break them down, starting with the batshit crazy. First theory. Some people believe the absence of the island of Bermeja can be explained quite simply. We've slipped into an alternate dimension. Yep. Good old Mandela effect. We've slipped into a different dimension where Berenstain Bears Island doesn't exist, but it did in the old dimension. Which, whatever, sure, okay. It couldn't have been a whole continent that disappeared, just some random-ass tiny island that a drunken, probably syphilitic Spaniard found 500 years ago. Sure, that's probably definitely what happened. Please take your medication. Your family is very worried about you. Theory dos. The CIA destroyed the island to extend American influence into Mexico's exclusive economic zone because of the oil. Now this one, slightly less crazy perhaps. I don't trust the CIA. That should be evidently clear from all of the videos that I've made talking about all the crazy shit they've done since they've been around. Look, you can watch one here or there or wherever. Once I'm done. Watch it once I'm done. Does the incentive exist? Absolutely. There's nothing America loves more than some crude oil, baby. A lot of places have found that out the hard way. But did the capability to destroy an entire island exist? Well, depending on the size of the island, yeah. Do I believe this to have been the case? Probably not, honestly. I mean, there's a couple reasons. First of which being that the evidence the island didn't exist started showing up 100 years before America had the capability to destroy an island at a time when we were actively at war with Mexico, so we could have just taken it if we wanted it. Which, I mean, if you ask James K. Polk, who was president at the time, he definitely would have taken it. He wanted the Yucatan Peninsula, too. Jamie, pull up that map of all the territory that James K. Polk wanted. Is my hand in the... It is. I don't have a Jamie. I'm my own Jamie. And the second reason being that the discussion as to who would have the territorial claims to these waters as decided by the UN didn't even come up till 1973 before they were decided in 1982. So if the CIA was going to make that baller move, they would have had to have done it in the 70s or 80s, aka in the middle of the Cold War. The reason I bring that up is because here is where Bermeja supposedly existed. And that right there is Cuba. Cuba, very close ally to the Soviet Union. Closer to the supposed location of Bermeja than the United States of America. If the US had decided to drop a bomb large enough to destroy an entire island next to one of our greatest enemies in the world under the threat of nuclear annihilation, I'm not sure how that would have gone over. Another theory is that an earthquake or continental shift caused the island to be pulled into the sea like a Mexican Atlantis. Which, maybe, but if so, it would have had to have happened sometime between the 1550s when old Senor Nobody Knows Who claims to have discovered the island and the 1840s when Johnny Aerosmith called him on his bluff. And that is totally possible, it definitely could have happened. But there is very little to no seismic activity in the Gulf of Mexico, to the point where seismography isn't even studied in the Gulf of Mexico, or seismology, one of the two of those. I don't care, I'm not looking it up. And trust me, if it was a concern, they would definitely be looking into the study of the tectonic movements of the Gulf of Mexico. Because remember, it's full of oil. It's full of oil, that's why they're even trying to prove the place existed, because the oil, remember? Come on. Theory 4. Global warming.
Global wapu?
Yeah.
This theory states that rising sea levels have since placed the surface of the island underwater. And sea levels have risen since the 1500s. That's scientific fact. They've risen nearly 1.5 feet. If this was the case, at most, the island is less than 1.5 feet under the surface of the water. And not only would they have detected it with their advanced sonar equipment, they would have smashed the hull of their boats into it, because at most, it's 1.5 feet under the surface of the water. Theory 5. Mapsy oopsie poopsie. Maps in the 1500s weren't exactly known for their accuracy. I mean, get a load of that. Not saying I could do that. Even if I lived in the 1500s, I couldn't do it now, probably, but it doesn't matter. The guy who drew that map's been dead for 460 years. So I can make fun of him. If you happen to be watching this in the year 2485, by all means, make fun of me. I can assure you, I don't care. Plus, there are hundreds of those phantom islands over the course of history. Sometimes they were an optical illusion, sometimes they were a cartographer's error, or sometimes they would just make shit up. So during this time, maps were more precious than gold, and countries held on to their maps in the same way that modern countries hold on to their nuclear launch codes. So one of the tricks that cartographers would use to see if there was a leak or if somebody was copying their maps is they would make shit up and put it on their map, and then if somebody else showed up with a map that had the bit they made up, they would go, "Ha, gotcha." Modern day map companies actually still do this with land maps, these so-called paper towns. They just make things up to make sure that people aren't copying their work. For the record, the director of the Mexican Cartographer Society believes this to be the case. He stands to gain a lot more from the existence of Bermeja than I do. Plus, he actually knows what he's talking about. But you want to hear my theory? Of course you do. Remember earlier when I told you to remember that repulsive brown color? This is the part where that is the now that I wanted you to remember it for. Now, I have seen basically nothing in my research that has stated my theory, so I'm basically pulling it out of my ass. But hear me out. So, the guys who discovered Bermeja named it Bermeja because that's the Spanish word for the ruddy, brownish-reddish color that they said the island was. This color. That being said, in the ocean there's a species of animal you may have heard of called coral. And yes, coral is an animal, it's not a plant. You should have stayed awake in 4th grade science class, idiot. On occasion, coral will do something called a coral spawn. And that's when the coral will release all of its eggs and sperm, and they'll float to the surface of the water, And it looks like this. A reddish-brown island-shaped splotch on the surface of the water. Huh. And while the Mexican government has never been able to find an island where Bermeja supposedly existed, you know what does exist there? A fucking coral reef. Now, do I have any evidence that this was the case? Obviously not. Of course not. Don't be silly. But they did supposedly find an island that no one has ever seen since, in a location that we know a coral reef exists on, and they named the island they supposedly saw specifically after the color of a coral spawn directly over a coral reef. I'm pretty sure they saw a big old floating island of coral. Excuse me. But that's just a theory. A trout theory. I am of the opinion that it's definitely more likely than all the other bullshit we were talking about. And why am I, an internet shit poster, the first person to come up with this fucking theory? Like, we're literally talking about disputes in international waters. Why am I the one fucking doing the research for you, Mexico? I mean, technically that would be for America, because Mexico wants the island to exist, but I don't know. I don't fucking know. I don't fucking know. Maybe 15 years from now, the CIA will come out and be like, yeah, no, we totally nuked that back in 54. That wouldn't surprise me. Nothing surprises me anymore. I don't know. Whatever. But anyways, I've been King Trout, and as always, thank you for watching. King Trout, what happened to part 2 of the Halloween video?
It's a sensitive subject, and I don't want to talk about it.
What I do want to talk about is how I'm going to be changing up the style of content I make a little bit. Going to be mixing something else in that I think you'll like, because a lot of you have asked for it after I suggested maybe I do it one time. There's a little hintski for you. But yeah, thanks for watching, y'all. Like, comment, subscribe, call your mom, do all that stuff. Merchandise linked below. I love you. Bye.